Okay.
Okay, I would like to call the planning board meeting of January 24th to order, and it is 6:03 p.m. And under Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20F, this meeting is being recorded, and it's also being transmitted live through the town channels. First up are administrative items, rules and regulations of the subdivision of land endorsed for recording at New Bedford Registry of Deeds.
So no motion has to be made. You guys approved the edit to the subdivision rules and regs back in November, but when I went to have it recorded, there's a page in here on 31 that requires the planning board signature, and I had to update the date of the revisions. So I have two hard copies that I flagged for you guys to sign.
So I should leave, the chairman should sign the top.
So I've graduated from chairman to chairperson.
That's what the document said.
And while we're finishing that, we can go on to the next thing. It's approval not required, A&R, for 533 Horseneck Road, file number 23-001A. Request by the applicant for endorsement of a plan of land showing 4 lots for land located at 533 Horseneck Road, maps 73, lot 73, 74, and 76.
That's, I believe, it's you.
Yes. Good evening, Attorney Kevin Medeiros, representing the Rigid Family Trust. We have before you an approval not required plan. As you know, in order to obtain an endorsement on this plan, we need to meet the square footage requirements and the frontage requirements on a public way. And as you can see with the plan in front of you, we do meet all those requirements. We have lot number 1 with total frontage of 189 feet with 60,232 square feet, all upland. Lot number 2 being 189 feet with 60,146 of all upland. Lot 3, 163 feet of frontage on Horseneck Road with all upland. And then lot number 4 has frontage on Petty Lane of 150 feet with a total square footage of 157,000 square feet with greater than 30,000 square feet of upland. As you can see, we've met all of those requirements under Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81P, which requires the square footage and frontage be met for endorsement on this. And we'd ask this board to endorse this plan.
So, as just a question on Lot 4, you also have this skinny little 20-foot section that is going back to Horseneck Road. What's up?
We have that for utilities for access to the lot.
There are no utilities on Petty Lane?
I can answer that. Yes, of course there are, but in this area, Mr. Chairman, you have a row of pine trees that are right, pretty much right along the property line. You have a stone wall, you have trees in this area. This is a straight shot right now. There's a pole right here, you can drop and run it right down. It'd be much easier to run utilities down that. At first, we thought of doing it with just an easement, then I thought nobody likes easements, so that's the point of that.
Is that gonna become a driveway too?
It's not the intent, the intent is to use qualifying frontage.
Can you please identify yourself?
I'm sorry.
Can you identify yourself?
I'm sorry, Greg Nicholas, South Dakota.
So Greg, can you tell me if you're gonna further subdivide Lot 4? Is that why it's configured in that
That's
fashion?
not the intention, no.
So it's not the intention, it's such a ambiguous term.
Well,
It's
I
not
can't-
the intention to be a driveway, it's not the intention to subdivide.
So the other question is this Gillis, now or formerly Gillis
Mhm,
lot that you're going around,
mhm.
what's the nature of that land? I mean, is that a house right there?
There's a house up over here. This is a developed piece of property. The stone wall runs.
No, sorry.
Oh, that's
This is a
good.
house. Stone wall runs right through. The previous A&R plan, there's no conservation land. The previous A&R plan pushed this lot out, I'm not sure why, into the middle of this field. And that's the way it is.
So,
If you were to go by and look at it, you wouldn't think that's where the lot goes, but it
yeah.
is.
So, I guess my question, why this configuration? I understand you're trying to make 3 buildable lots and a lot in the back, right? Out of this one lot. It seems kind of not very neighborly to make a driveway go right around this other person's house.
Well, it's a 50-foot width. I wouldn't imagine a driveway would be 50 feet long, 50 foot wide. I imagine it would be more like 12 to 14 feet wide. And there's nothing that, you know, you couldn't plant a buffer between that and the other, if you wanted to do that.
Well, as both of you know, there's not much we can do with this, except make the finding that it's not a subdivision, although it kind of looks like one, but, you know, it's not my favorite A&R, I'll just say that. I think it's kind of a nice geometric exercise, but I don't know that it is great. I think you probably could have, knowing how you do things, I think you could have done it a little bit differently. Because the frontage on Horse Neck Road certainly would have allowed for an access to this other lot. May not have been enough. How much total frontage does it have?
You would have had it would have had to go by special permit.
Yeah.
We did investigate doing this by flexible frontage.
Right.
Okay? But if we could do it this way, and again, I'm working for the landowner, this is an easier process. If maybe it doesn't give you the best geometric shape that you talked about, I'm not arguing with you on that point, but, you know, the other one is a much more complicated process. But we did investigate it at the time. I'm not sure if the amount of land that's left would be enough, 3.61, I'm not sure it would even be enough. If you're looking at the area here, 157,000 would be a little bit short on area. If you want 50 feet of frontage.
You could probably have gotten 3 different shaped lots out of it, some of them pretty large. But we're not here to design it for you, so. So, anybody else have any questions or comments?
Just, well, a minor question here, but lot 2 has the, has that nice, well, I won't say nice, it has an old stone wall right through the middle of it. Is it not your intention to tear that down?
No, the driveway goes right through where it is now. So this house is actually using both sides of that, and there's no intention to tear that down.
Okay.
Actually, for what it's worth, I mean, we can't plan it definitely for the future, but one of the trustees in the family wants to keep this lot for himself, so. You know, I can't say that he's not gonna sell it a year from now, just like I can't say that other lot would never be subdivided, although I don't think it would be worth it. I'm trying to subdivide lot 4.
So, this is, if you go back to the other one, that's what it shows on the assessor's map.
Yes. This
So,
is the GIS from the assessors.
what you're showing here, lot lines, as shown on a different plan, right? To be abolished,
Yeah.
and are all of these lots in the same ownership? Anybody else? Then I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the endorsement of the plan entitled Plan of the Land, 533 Horseneck Road, Westport, Mass., prepared for Richard Family Trust, 533 Horseneck Road, assesses map 73, lot 73, 74, and 76, because the plan complies with the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81P.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next is Buzzards Bay Coalition support letter for Buzzards Bay National Estuaries Project potential grant.
Yes, so I have prepared a letter for the planning board to endorse Buzzards Bay Coalition's application to the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program grant. I know you all are familiar with it, but just for the record, this is a grant application to request $300,000 in funds for engineering services to design a community septic system at the Let neighborhood. This is needed because the septic systems in the neighborhood are failing, and so there needs to be an intervention to ensure that this neighborhood has adequate wastewater disposal, drinking water protections, and prevent further nitrogen from leaching into the watershed. So, as I said, this request, the Buzzards Bay Coalition is going to request $300,000 grant funds for that. They also would like to have the planning board make a request to the Board of Selectmen for $30,000 in ARPA funds, so they can provide 10% match with this proposal. So I would like to ask for the board to make a motion for both of these items.
Okay, so the one difference from how you described it, Buzzards Bay is helping us apply. They are not the applicant.
Correct.
We are the applicant.
Correct.
So,
They've prepared the application.
right. And we're having an ARPA meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And that has already been requested to be on the agenda. So we'll see. They did provide $30,000 for the MVP grant, local match. And so I don't know what the ARPA committee will do, but it'd be for the same exact thing, so.
When you say it's for the exact same thing, you mean the exact same amount for a different thing? Or
It's the exact same amount for,
a different thing?
it's a different thing, but it was a grant for the same thing through the MVP program, which we did not
Oh,
get.
all right, so we should get it, is what you're saying. It's a
Hopefully.
different program for
Different
the
program
same.
for the same project, for the same amount of money,
Right.
for
The same application as well.
same application,
Yeah, the
basically.
same.
Same project narrative.
Different swing at a different pitch.
A different swing at a different pitch
Okay.
from a different team.
So, we are requesting the 300,000.
Yes, the town is requesting $300,000 in grant funds for this, yes.
And so is the motion to support the town of Westport's application?
Well, to endorse Buzzard Bay Coalition's prepared application for the town of Westport.
No, I think it's to support, I think just what you said, is to support the application from the
town of
town.
Westport.
And
Okay,
the planning board will be the entity that does that.
okay.
So,
You want a motion?
please.
I would move that, and we're preparing a letter for that. Yeah. I would move that we authorize the chair to sign a letter to the Board of Selectmen supporting the application to the Buzzards Bay Watershed Infrastructure Support Grant for $300,000, which would require a $30,000 ARPA match for wastewater improvements to the Let neighborhood.
Second. Any more discussions or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
So the motion also includes endorsing the application?
Yeah.
Okay. Assistant planners report. Or assistant and planners report, I guess both.
Mine's shorter because I didn't really make one. I'm just working on a document Nadine gave me for all the outstanding surety accounts we have that have been going on for a long time. So I'm going through every one of them and trying to get in contact with the applicant and the developer to provide an update on those subdivisions and hopefully get those squared away and from sitting in the queue. There's about 9 of them. A lot of them are CaraCorp, but Mile Way is being worked on. And Bentley Estates, I reached out to Mr. Kafori today, so hopefully I'll be hearing on that. But I'm going through the list, trying to check them off, get the subdivisions kind of wrapped up that we have that are ongoing.
Okay.
Amy, question on Isidoro Court. Did you find out from the town council, or does anybody here know, has that been settled?
I have not heard about Isidoro Court, but I have heard about Horseneck, for Horseneck Road. I know that court met last week and there was a discrepancy in the time and date of the meeting, so that was their motion for dismissal by the applicant was postponed until a later date. But for Isidoro Court, I'll check on that tomorrow. I know that the same town council person was working on that one.
So there's a discrepancy in the date and time.
So I guess the applicant went to the court hearing.
Yeah.
And the people who were appealing it did not show.
Okay.
So, I guess the request for dismissal is still ongoing by the applicant.
They don't lose it if this is their second strike. Because they didn't get the application into the town clerk in time,
Yep.
and they didn't show up for a court date. It would seem to me. But who knows? Who knows? Okay. But Isadora Court, what are we waiting for? Are we waiting to hear from town council?
Yeah, I can check with,
This is the Butters suit.
yeah.
The abutters suit. Oh. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know which one this is. Okay.
I'll double check. Last time I heard, she was preparing the document for our response for the town, so I'll double check if there's been any movement on that.
Good. Okay.
So first item I have is the Route 6 rezoning initiative. We met with BSC Group last week, kind of restart this project after we had a new scope of services drafted to expand the scope of the project. So the project locus is now the entirety of the Route 6 corridor, to come up with a zoning framework for that, or rezoning framework for that corridor. And as a part of this, there will be a recommended phasing of implementation of that, of those zoning recommendations. So I would imagine that the first phase is kind of preliminary based on our discussions last week, but first phase we would be looking at the area between Fall River and Route 88. Talked a bit about considering to allow multi-unit housing there, as well as commercial uses, mix of uses, the whole gamut, and the potential for increased residential densities in some of the neighborhoods off of Route 6. And then east of Route 88, there would be nodes of increased use intensity and residential development with reductions in scale in between those nodes. And so that's long and short of it. We will be meeting with Russ from BSC Group back here on February 23rd. No comments on that. Then next is an update on the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program Grant. This is the town's, we're doing 2 applications for this grant. One is for the program or project at Delet. The second one is for requesting grant funds for MS4 activities. So this is ready to go, and I'm ready to have that submitted next week.
And how much are we asking for?
We are asking for $25,000. We'll be providing $5,000 in match. So that'll fund a variety of different testing activities and different MS4 locations.
Everybody know what MS4 is?
No.
So can you explain what MS4 is?
The municipal sewer
Stormwater.
stormwater.
So this is EPA program of managing stormwater discharges. And we are 5 or 6 years into our response, in which we do maintenance work in the town's drainage system and report on that work. And it also includes sort of housekeeping of public buildings and things as well.
So we'll be going to put out a bid for a consultant to perform this work. Next, we have in our last meeting, the planning board voted to have a letter of support to the Climate Resilience Committee's application to the Municipal Vulnerability Program. So Jim, I'll prepare that and have
Okay.
that for you to sign.
So who's signing for the town? Jim Hartnett? John Bullard? Sean O'Shufeldt?
Well, this is the planning board's recommendation of the CRC's application. So it's a
Right.
letter of support.
But who's signing for the CRC?
I can sign for the CRC, John can sign, Jim can.
Good.
This next item is just a reminder, we are having a public hearing at the next planning board meeting for the 2023 zoning revisions. And the next one is also a reminder, Jim, we will be going to the finance committee meeting to present the planning board's budget for next year. This is on 31st at 6:30. I believe they have virtual meetings. They haven't posted the warning yet, so
Right.
I don't know if it's going to be in person or virtual.
Last year was virtual, so
It's
I
virtual.
don't know what it is
It was during a planning board meeting, too.
this year. Right.
Right. Well, that's why they're actually having one today, I believe.
Right.
But we're here, so.
And Michael, that budget, Jim Hatton has looked at our budget.
Yes, he is recommending what I've recommended in full. He didn't make any revisions to it. One last reminder is that, Jim, any comments on the housing production plan survey? Make sure to have those submitted by the 31st. You can send it over to Serpad or me or Amy. And then last item is Serpad's regional transportation plan. It's going to be a wide-ranging view of the region's transportation needs that prioritizes projects out to 2050. And as a part of beginning that planning process, they're having meetings with communities that represent the Serpad region. I've put out a poll to try to schedule that meeting for sometime next week or the following week. I invited Jim and Bob to that meeting to avoid having any sort of quorum issues with the planning board.
Yeah.
The rest of you all can feel free to send us any comments on areas where there are problems with the street network, intersections, those kinds of things. Or you can send it directly to Serpad staff if you'd like as well.
So this is to do with our own street structure or our interface with our state
It can be any.
or buses?
It could be, yeah, it doesn't even have to be automobile infrastructure. It could be, you have concerns about the bike lane on Route 88 that heads south down from here to the bus stations up on, or bus stops up on Route 6. Runs the whole gamut of transportation issues. So it could even be, thinking forward to 2050, you could bring things up about trying to have enhanced transit access to the MBTA station in Fall River. So it doesn't necessarily have to be existing issues as well. And that's all I have.
Okay. Correspondence, zoning board of appeals notice. Looks rather routine. Minutes of January 10th.
Mr. Chairman, just the minutes are, I just thought maybe, I mean, this is just sort of an English lesson here, but some of the wording toward the end of the minutes might be, just for clarity's sake, might be cleared up, might be changed, but I'm referring specifically to page 3, the community one-stop expression of interests, and you can see in the first paragraph it mentions the 3 potential applications: the main road sidewalks, the Route 6 Mass Works project, and underutilized sites. And then the last sentence says, Burris, at least this is the way I read it, Burris concluded that the project locus will be from Westport Village Commons to 10 Cousins Restaurant. I presume that refers to the sidewalks?
Mm-hmm.
So would it be a little clearer to just either put that under the item 1, main walk sidewalks, or put it just to say, insert the word, Burris concluded that the project locus for main road sidewalks will be from.
Yeah, we can have Nadine add that to after the main road sidewalks piece. I would also say that it's not, we should probably clarify that it's not just sidewalks, but it's main road transportation corridor study.
Okay.
So
All right.
wouldn't just be a sidewalk project for main road. And then we can have your comment about the long-term building committee, have that added right after item number 3 in that list.
Yeah, and I wanted to just kind of clean that up a little bit, because it reads a little bit confusing, and I think, but what I meant, or what was intended to be said, I don't know if it was, but is Schmid stated the long-term building committee intends to conduct a more in-depth study, and then I would say to keep the old high school for adaptive reuse by the town or sell the property.
Sounds good.
Can you amend that and just kind of clean it up a little bit? I realize in Nadine's defense, it gets to be the end of a long evening, and sometimes these minutes get a little garbled, but.
Yep.
And at the end of a long meeting, we kind of become garbled.
And we become
also.
garbled, yes.
So Mark, is what you're saying a motion to approve the minutes with those amendments?
Yes, that would be.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Short and long-term planning. Since we're getting done so early, maybe we could spend a few minutes talking about this. I think there's 2 things.
Jim, I just have
Did I
one
miss it?
comment. I think we want to make the record show that Manny abstained from voting on those
Yes.
minutes, correct? Because you were absent at those
Yes.
meetings.
Absolutely. So, Bob and I and a whole bunch of other people went to the DEP, I don't know if it was a
Information
meeting-
session.
information session at UMass Dartmouth last week. And I spoke, so I would like to have a short synopsis from Bob, what happened.
It was like John Henry and Hein Bloom facing the Red Sox fans.
Right. Put me in, coach. They held a public information session. I would think it was about 200 people in attendance, very well attended, at UMass Dartmouth at their Marketplace Conference Center. And they announced at the beginning that it was not for questions about the draft regulations, but information, you could ask questions about, they were presenting the information about the program. And there were a lot of questions, a lot of opposition, a lot of questions about the cost and the feasibility of adopting the regulations, and also the impacts that the regulations would have on the town. And there was a general critique of the regulations, and my impression was that it wasn't DEP's finest hour in defending what they were doing. That
I would concur.
that they largely didn't have answers to the questions of the impact of the towns, or the impacts on individuals, but they continued to push the option that the towns had to adopt. Just for the listening audience, the regulations apply directly to homeowners, and upon the designation of nitrogen-sensitive areas, and the Westport River is one of those areas and will get a designation. Once that designation is made, the individual homeowners have 5 years to install a nitrogen, the best available technology, nitrogen reducing systems. And the estimate of those costs are between $30,000 and, I guess the total range of cost estimates is $15,000 to $100,000, but sort of the central cost of the capital cost of putting those in for homeowners would be $30,000 to $50,000. And there's an annual reporting obligation, testing and reporting obligation. There is an alternative in the draft regulations, and that alternative is for the towns to essentially apply for a watershed management permit, in which the town would commit to making improvements which reduce the nitrogen load on the river. If the town makes the commitments, then the obligation on the individual homeowners is laid aside as long as the town complies with its commitments. And if the town fails to comply with the commitments it makes in the permit, then the DEP will revoke, the way the regulations read, the permit will be revoked, and then the 5-year obligation, or the upgrade obligation within 5 years kicks in again on the homeowners. So the answer to most of the questions about how the regulations would work, and the feasibility, and whether the town can even observe 7,000 new perk tests, and all of the kind of implementation questions, they were almost always answered with, well, there is this alternative that the towns can step in and enter into the water management plan, watershed management plan. So the meeting lasted a couple of hours. There were no real supporters of the regulations as they're drafted, and both the town of Dartmouth and the town of Westport's Board of Health have filed very well crafted critiques of the regulations, and I think the DEP will have to fix some of the provisions in the regulations that are just truly not implementable.
I didn't attend, but I read about it and talked with others about it. And as I go gathering signatures, I certainly hear about it from people. I do my best to say, hey, it's not planning board, it's Board of Health. Back off. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Bob and Jim, in the way I look at this. You guys have been working for a long time on the integrated water management plan, and Westport is in many ways ahead of a lot of towns in the Cape and the Buzzards Bay watershed in terms of having a wastewater management plan. I'm a water quality tester for the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and I can see the impacts of nitrogen on the river. There's no question that it's harmful, and in a number of places getting worse, and we have to reduce the amount of nitrogen. There's also no question that that's expensive, and that there is not a single way to do it. As the integrated management plan says, there's a number of ways of doing it, from sewage to, like we talked about with Alette, community systems to nitrogen removing septic systems. So it's not an easy problem. But what frosts me is DEP coming with a heavy-handed end-around unfunded mandate. And that's the way I see it, by saying, by laying out an impractical solution that they know is only going to, you know, stir up a hornet's nest with this 5-year threat that they have no intention of ever taking place, but they know is just going to whip people up, saying you are forced to invest $50,000 every single person to fix your septic system, just to get people angry. It is a threat to put pressure on towns. It is not constructive. It is DEP being irresponsible, and it's an end around trying to get a mandate. And unfunded mandates are not allowed. And that's why the legislation by Senator Montigny and Chris Markey saying this is going nowhere unless you guys provide money. By the way, the state is awash in money, and last time I looked, Westport is not.
Right.
And so for them to say, Westport, you come up with the money, when we're floating in money, is, you know, is ludicrous. So I think that to say DEP is not their finest hour is it's a master of understatement.
Right. So I think that you need to understand how we get here. And I think since, I don't know when it was, when this law was put into place, but it made it illegal in Massachusetts to do what we're doing, is actually doing nothing about it.
Yeah.
Right, so Conservation Law Foundation is suing DEP for not doing what they're supposed to do. And so at the meeting, people were asking, we filed a Freedom of Information Act request for the documents from this negotiation, and it has not been given. So I'm sure what has happened and why this thing is such a screwy thing, it was a negotiation between DEP and Conservation Law Foundation to get to the point where, because they don't have the ability to force the towns to go into the 20-year thing, the only way that they can get the towns to do it is to scare the crap out of everybody and make it
Yeah.
so that the town has to do it because everybody's in uproar. Well, what's happening is different. What's happening is the people are in uproar, but the other branch of the government, the legislature, is trying to say, hey, wait a minute, we need to provide money for this. And also, it is against the law to have an unplanted mandate in Massachusetts. So this Attorney General should be after this too.
And the lawsuit was really focused on the Cape,
Yep.
and then they just sort of dragged in the South Coast communities because some of us have TMDL limits, like the Westport River, and also the oddity of if you lay aside for a moment who pays, but just if there's going to be an expenditure of money, if we looked at providing sewer and water in all of North Westport, if we did that over a program of 15 to 20 years, that's probably in terms of today's dollars, a $60 or $70 million project over 20 years. So think of it as $3 or $4 million a year kind of investments in public infrastructure. If we say, well, we don't have the money to do that, DEP saying, well, the citizens reach in your pocket and you do it by upgrading your systems. And what is that costing collective? Looking at 3,000 or 4,000 systems in North Westport? Well, that's between 110 and 170 million dollars. And you think, you know, collectively, DEP is really harming the citizens, and that we really have an effective and efficient way of reducing nitrogen in the river and improving the water quality. And if DEP put its money into some common collective approach in which we could really have efficiencies, they would be, collectively, who pays, we would be miles and miles ahead and have a better system. And it's a combination of sewering some areas. We already require all new construction to have denitrifying systems. We already have sunset provisions on cesspools. The Board of Health does, with new applications, make the maximum feasible compliance requirements. And we've done an integrated study that looks at what does it take to meet the limits in the river, and it's a whole combination of activities, not everybody reach in your pocket for the way the regulations are drafted. It would actually require people who aren't even tributary to the Westport River to reach in their pocket for $50,000. And it's just, it is just nonsensical. And someone's, to make your point, John, someone stood up and said, this is the carrot and the stick kind of approach. And it's actually two sticks. We can either beat you with a heavy stick or beat you with a light stick. Right?
But the whole thing with DEP, I've been trying to deal with this for at least a decade and a half. We've had DEP here to the Select Board's office and point out, this is probably 12 years ago, maybe even 14 years ago. We know we got this, we're in the middle of the MEP process, and by the way, MEP, who owns the system of doing the MEP? Is it SMAST or is it DEP? So that got held up for like 4 years while we waited for them to hash out their fight. So we had DEP in the Selectman's office, and we said, okay, we know we got too much nitrogen. We're thinking of requiring all new septic systems to be denitrifying. And the DEP guy said, oh, no, you don't want to do that, because the solution might be sewering. And we said, have you ever been to Westport? I mean, there's no way you could sewer everybody. And he said, no, you shouldn't require people to install denitrifying, because it may not be the solution. And it's just gonna cost the people too much money. So in the time, like 15 years ago, when the guy said that, and now, we've probably installed over 1,000 septic systems, which we now have to mitigate, because they're contributing just as much nitrogen as before. And so in the interim, we worked with Paul Schmidt to get legislation to force DEP to pay attention to this, and to if we're in a dirty waters river, which we are on the list of dirty waters, the river, that it automatically be considered an impaired embayment, which is part of DEP's Title V, and there's slightly different requirements for septic systems and everything else in those locations. So after 3 times we tried to get this thing through, finally we got to committees up in Boston. So I go and testify, and a whole bunch of other people from Westport and Dartmouth and Buzzards Bay and Buzzards Bay National Estuaries Project all go up and testify. And the last guy up to testify is Sundlin, who was the commissioner of DEP, and he talked against it, said, no, you don't want to do that. So they killed it. I mean, it never went any further. And now that's 8 years ago, so, or 7, I don't know. But it's just incredible. And now that they're being sued by Conservation Law Foundation, they've gotten religion. But it just, nobody's paying attention up there.
Well, part of the problem, I mean, we're all saying that Westport, as opposed to so many of the other towns on the Cape, and some of our neighboring towns for that matter, has taken the steps that have been enumerated here. So to alleviate this issue problem, and so it's, it's not a one, I think what we're all bothered by is that it's not a one suit fits all people here. It's not, what we're doing in Westport has taken substantial measures in the direction of rectifying the problem, whereas many other towns have taken none of them.
Right.
And so to have this mandate apply uniformly to all these towns within this region that's been identified, it doesn't make any sense.
But also, so there's the big stick and the small stick. So the small stick is the 20-year plan, but the target for the nitrogen reduction is 75% of what the septic load is when you start. So
75% reduction?
Reduction.
Yeah.
So what's that? How do you measure that?
That's a lot.
Instead of trying to get below the TMDL, which is what we've been looking at for 6 years now. So
Well, the way to do that is you sewer where you can sewer, you site specific these units where they can be,
Right.
and then what is the DEP's feeling on Mass Highway? Because Mass Highway is a big contributor in Westport to our
Right.
problem.
yeah.
That's beyond our control.
Yep.
I mean, the Bread and Cheese Brook, when Mass Highway floods and it goes, 400 feet in that direction, 400 feet in that direction, every catch basin and scupper go directly into the brook. No
Goes
containment
directly,
whatsoever.
right.
So, I mean, the West Branch is pretty good. I would say that Title V kind of mitigated the West Branch, the 25 years since we've changed Title V.
Yep.
We still have maybe some cesspools out there that need to be taken care of. The East Branch, we got to see what we got coming in on the border. and then we got Route 6, 177, and 88. The only stormwater.
I-195.
Yeah, and 195, right. I want to say, and I've been working in that watershed since the early 80s, and I've done a lot of stormwater management projects in that watershed, all private. The state's done one at the intersection of Lincoln Park. I was a subcontractor on a piece of 195 that we took down 3 feet, 2,400 feet of 195. They did no drainage improvements at all. So, I mean, what's the DEP's, like, I wanted to make it to that meeting, but
Well, the other
what's
thing
their
I've
feeling
asked,
on that?
what I've asked Michael to do is, if it's public records, can we get a hold of what the state is providing for the stormwater off the state highways in our town
Right.
for the MS4? Because they have to be doing it, and there's some indication that they've marked some catch basins and stuff.
You know,
But-
I mean, that Conservation Law Foundation, that's what happened in Fall River with the CSO tunnel.
Right.
I mean, that's that was antiquated from the 1800s, combined sewer overflow. And back when they were doing that, I'm like, why are you gonna be treating this water? That they should be separating it. And then
Right.
later, now and today, what we're seeing, now I understand why that happened. And it was costly to Fall River, but it was a good, I mean, they're treating all the water. I mean,
Yeah.
they have problems holding it back now. I mean, John, do you know what the status of the Taunton River is now? As far as like their load
No,
compared to us?
no, I don't.
I mean, that would be interesting. I mean, they did a lot of work, and they're doing a lot of drainage work now in Fall River. The state did, last year, the year before, some retention basins and stuff along 195 in Fall River, but they didn't do anything up around our way. I mean, they cleaned catch basins on Route 6, that's what they hadn't done that in, I think, 15 years.
Yeah, that's because of the MS4. They got the EPA got after them.
And they also went into them about the DEP got on them on Mass Highway on Route 6 and Fawns Corner Road. They had a dumping ground behind there where they just dumped everything for years and did have a project, and they filled in the wetlands, and they made them dig it all out and reclaim it. So I think,
We had a problem with them when they were doing the stormwater, some catch basins on 177 down at the low point, which goes right into the river. And they were just connecting it right to the brook. And they weren't going before Conservation Commission, which they're not immune from that. They have to do that. And so there was a big stink, but they came back and did it differently. And I think we just have to keep our eyes open and see what's going on. But, so my other point about the 75% reduction in septic system, if you can measure what the heck that is, to be that as a target, that may not be enough. Because, if you look at the pie chart of what the septic systems are in the whole thing of nitrogen, I don't know, 75% of what? I mean, each septic system
No,
has a different load.
I mean, that's one of my big problems too, is they're calling it the total load, so they're just adding up bedrooms, and they're saying this is what the number is.
What the load is, right.
But again, nitrogen, we don't want zero nitrogen. I mean, this is food for our wetlands, it's, so that number is just to scare people. The total load of what it really actually affects the river.
75% is a tough number, because if you replace a septic system with a nitrogen removing septic system, you get about 75%. That would mean to achieve 75%, you have to have 100%
Yes.
removal,
In a perfect world.
replacement of septic systems. That's just not going to happen.
No,
And also, there's all kinds of, in the weeds on this issue. It's DEP has this idea, the 75% number comes from the MEP estuary study, in which the 2004 sort of data. And, if you look at the changes in our regulations, the amount of open space that we have, when we did the integrated water management plan, our forecast of the build-out of the town was substantially less than their forecast of the build-out of the town. And we're acquiring more land all the time. Look at this board and its special permit negotiations with the solar array
Yeah.
people have negotiated contributions into the
Yeah.
Buzzards Bay Coalition. You know, that estuaries report put houses in that piece of conservation land. You know, that load is gone. And, you know, and that idea that they have this report that they did, and, you know, and it's now almost 20 years later, and there's no recognition of the work that this town has done, and, you know, over that period of time.
Mr. Chair, have you discussed this enough, or
Yes.
you want a motion to adjourn?
But we didn't solve the problem.
No, we didn't?
No.
But we educated everyone who's watching.
So, are there any matters
Just
not
So I-
reasonably
So I signed it
anticipated?
twice?
Oh, you signed it?
I assume not.
Oh, you did?
So, okay,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.